The roar of the excavator's engine ripped through the quiet morning like a chainsaw through silk as its teeth sank into the weathered planks of my grandfather's footbridge. There stood Victoria Langley, Willow Creek Estate's self-appointed queen, clipboard raised like a royal decree, smirking as she announced, "This eyesore has to go for everyone's safety and our new community vision." Neighbors shifted uncomfortably on the sidewalk, avoiding my eyes, while I stood silent on my porch with fists clenched, because what this HOA Karen didn't realize was that tearing down my bridge had just given me the perfect reason to pull the plug on their precious $1 million lake. My name's Logan Hayes, and I've never been the guy who yells at town halls or waves protest signs. I fix things. I keep my head down, mow my lawn on schedule, and wave at the mailman. But Victoria? She turned, keeping the neighborhood nice, into a full-contact sport with fines instead of helmets. She arrived 3 years ago like a hurricane in pastel cardigans, all smiles and community standards, but her eyes always lingered a beat too long on anything that didn't match her vision board. The bridge my grandfather built in 1972 wasn't just wood and bolts to me. It was the only safe way across the creek to the little cluster of cabins he left me, the same cabins where I learned to bait a hook before I could ride a bike. Victoria started small, the way all good dictators do. First notice arrived in a crisp envelope. Unauthorized structure obstructing aesthetic flow, $250 fine. I laughed until I read the next line. Visible bridge where compromising property values. My grandfather's bridge had withstood 3 hurricanes and every kid in the subdivision using it as a bike ramp for 20 years. But according to Victoria, the creek in the third plank was a liability. I paid it. Quietly. Because that's what reasonable people do, right? Then came the second letter. Grass height violation adjacent to community waterway, $150. My lawn was exactly 4 inches. I measured it with a ruler while the HOA compliance officer, some retired accountant named Gary who suddenly wore a reflective vest, stood in my driveway with a tape measure like he was defusing a bomb. Standards evolve, Logan. Victoria purred at the next board meeting, her voice all honey and razor blades. We're elevating Willow Creek. Think of the children and their future equity. The room nodded like trained seals. I sat in the back row, arms crossed, watching her pearl necklace bounce with every righteous breath. By month for the fines stacked like Jenga blocks. Holiday lights left up past January 15th, $300. Never mind that the lights were solar and shaped like tiny American flags. Mailbox decal non-compliant with color palette, $175. My grandfather's faded haze sticker apparently clashed with the approved soothing neutrals. Neighbors started crossing the street when they saw me coming. Mrs. Patel, who used to bring me tamales every Christmas, suddenly remembered urgent errands. Frank, the retired Marine who once helped me rebuild my dock, now stared at his shoes. Victoria's flyers were everywhere. Cheap printer paper screaming, neighborhood slob alert. One resident's neglect is dragging all our values down. They didn't name me. They didn't have to. Everyone knew. I never argued in public. I just smiled that small, tight smile my grandfather taught me. The one that says, "I see you," without giving them ammunition. Because while Victoria was busy measuring grass blades, I was measuring something else. The upstream valve. The one my grandfather installed on our private land before the HOA even existed. The one that controlled every drop feeding Willow Creek Lake. The same sparkling centerpiece that made every waterfront mansion worth its inflated price tag. Victoria's precious, resort-style pavilion project that she kept pushing at meetings, it sat right on the edge of that lake. And every time she smiled and talked about elevating the community, I heard the cash register in her voice. The day the demolition permit was approved, Victoria held a little press conference on the shore, complete with mini quiches and a banner that read "Progress for All." She posed for photos in front of the bridge like it was a trophy buck. "This structure is condemned," she declared, voice dripping with practiced concern. "We've consulted experts. Safety first, always." The experts were her cousin's inspection company. I watched from my porch, coffee in hand, while the excavator backed into position. The operator, some kid who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, glanced at me once. I gave him a single nod. He looked away fast. That night the flyers multiplied like roaches. Is your neighbor putting everyone at risk? One even had a cartoon of a bridge collapsing on stick figure children. I found one taped to my mailbox at 2 a.m. The tape was still warm. Victoria's signature scent, vanilla candle mixed with desperation, clung to the paper. I took photos of every single one, time-stamped, cataloged. Because when the storm came, I wanted receipts. The neighbors who once borrowed my ladder now pretended they didn't see me. At the community pool, conversations died when I walked by. Little Timmy from down the street, the kid I taught to skip stones, was yanked inside by his mom the second I waved. Victoria had turned fear into currency, and everyone was buying. I kept my mouth shut, kept my records, and every evening I walked the half-mile upstream to the valve house. I oiled the wheel, tested the gears, whispered to the water like my grandfather used to. Patience, boy. Water remembers. By the time the big day arrived, Victoria was practically glowing. She showed up in white linen pants and a hard hat that still had the price tag crease, flanked by two board members carrying safety first signs like they were marching in a parade. The excavator growled to life at exactly 8 a.m. Sharp, because of course she scheduled it for prime Instagram lighting. The first bite of steel into oak sounded like a bone snapping. Splinters flew. Neighbors gasped theatrically. Victoria clapped once, sharp and delighted, then caught herself and arranged her face into solemn concern. "We're doing this for you, Logan," she called across the creek, loud enough for everyone's phones to catch. "One day you'll understand." I didn't answer. I just stood there in my flannel shirt, arms loose at my sides, watching decades of my family's history get chewed up and spat into the water. Every plank carried a memory. Grandpa teaching me to drive nails straight, summer nights when the whole neighborhood used the bridge for fireworks viewing, the time I carried my prom date across at piggyback because her heels kept catching. Victoria's smirk never wavered. She even posed for a selfie with the wreckage in the background, caption ready in her head, "I'm sure. Hard decisions for a better community, Willow Creek strong." The sheriff showed up halfway through, lights flashing but siren off, because God forbid the HOA queen be inconvenienced. Victoria strutted over, clipboard thrust forward like a shield. "Officer, this man is in violation of multiple covenants. We have the votes. We have the permits." The deputy looked at the paperwork, then at me. I handed him the faded manila folder I'd been carrying since sunrise. Inside, the original deed from 1971, stamped and notarized. The survey map showing the bridge and valve house sat squarely on private land, never deeded to the HOA. The tax records proving I paid for every inch. The deputy flipped pages, eyebrows climbing. Victoria's smile cracked for the first time. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "this isn't HOA property. Never was." Her laugh was brittle. "Then we'll see you in court, Logan. Enjoy your little victory while it lasts." She spun on her heel and barked at the operator to finish the job. The final beam hit the water with a splash that sounded like applause. I waited until the dust settled and the last gawker left. Then I walked upstream. The valve house sat quiet under the pines, exactly as Grandpa left it. I gripped the iron wheel, cold, solid, familiar. One turn. Two. The groan of metal echoed like a sigh of relief. Water began to rush through the spillway, not flooding, but draining. Controlled. Deliberate. Exactly the way Grandpa taught me. By noon the lake level had dropped 2 feet. Docks that once floated proudly now tilted like drunk sailors. Expensive pontoon boats sat in the mud, propellers spinning uselessly in air. Someone's jet ski looked like a beached whale. Victoria's phone call started at 12:17 p.m. I let them go to voicemail. The first message was all sugar. "Logan, honey, there seems to be a misunderstanding with the water level. Could you pop over?" My message for the mask had slipped. "Turn it back on right now, or so help me God." Click. The neighborhood group chat exploded. "Is the lake supposed to look like this? My dock is sinking. My koi pond is now a koi puddle." I sat on my porch with a cold beer and watched the show. Victoria arrived in her golf cart, hair escaping its perfect bun, face the color of a ripe tomato. "What have you done?" she hissed, voice shaking. "This is sabotage." I took a slow sip. "No, Victoria. This is physics. Your precious lake depends on my valve. Always has. Deed says so. County records say so. You just never bothered to read them. Her eyes darted to the mud flats where her proposed pavilion site now looked like a crime scene. The organic sod she'd bragged about at every meeting was peeling back, revealing the cheap plastic mesh and construction debris she'd buried to save a buck. A dead koi floated belly up near her own backyard. The smell was already starting, that lovely mix of lake bed and exposed secrets. By sunset, half the waterfront homes had their docks high and dry. Luxury Adirondack chairs sat 6 feet above the new shoreline like forgotten lawn ornaments. Victoria stood at the edge of the mud, heels sinking, screaming into her phone at the county inspector she'd probably bribed last month. Neighbors who'd ignored me for months now hovered at the edge of my property, eyes wide. "Mrs. Patel whispered, "Logan, the fish my roses." I just shrugged. Standards evolve, right? The county inspector arrived the next morning with 3 federal agents in tow. Turns out Victoria's community vision included siphoning HOA dues into a secret LLC for her pavilion project. The drained lake exposed the illegal filled dirt, the unpermitted retaining walls, and the kickback checks she'd hidden in plain sight. Cameras rolled as they snapped cuffs on her wrists right there in the mud. Her perfect white linen pants were ruined. The clipboard finally slipped from her fingers and landed with a wet slap. "Logan," she spat as they led her past my porch, "you'll regret this." I smiled for the first time in months. Nah. Water remembers, Victoria. And right now it's remembering every lie you told. The vote to dissolve the HOA passed 87-3 the following week. No more fines for grass height. No more flyers. No more clipboard Gestapo. Neighbors who'd crossed the street to avoid me now showed up with tool belts and apologies. Frank brought his circular saw. Mrs. Patel brought tamales. Little Timmy asked if he could help hammer nails. We rebuilt the bridge together, stronger this time, with steel reinforcement and a brass plaque that read, "Hayes Crossing, built 1972, rebuilt by neighbors 2025. On opening day, we grilled burgers right in the middle of the new span, while kids ran back and forth like nothing had ever happened. The lake is slowly refilling now that the valve is back under county oversight. But the smell of fresh-cut pine and the sound of honest laughter? That's here to stay. Victoria's facing 18 months and a mountain of restitution. Last I heard, she's selling essential oils from a storage unit somewhere. The community chat now posts recipes and block party plans instead of violation reports. Turns out people can actually get along when no one's weaponizing standards. So here's the question I leave you with. Was I wrong to open that valve after they destroyed everything my grandfather built? Or was Victoria the real criminal the moment she decided her clipboard trumped my deed? Drop your verdict below, and if you've got your own HOA Karen story, I want to hear it. Because the next time one of these neighborhood dictators decides your property is their kingdom, just remember, water always finds its level. And sometimes, so does justice.